Welcome to Machete Boys BBQ. It's Wednesday morning and it's the first week of our competition, which means it's time to trim some chicken. Let's get into it. So I pick up my chicken on Tuesdays from Fresh Time, and I shop at Fresh Time because they sell Springer Mountain Farms. Springer Mountain Farms is an air-chilled chicken that apparently has no antibiotics or none of the nasty stuff that you want in chicken. If you're out there and you're searching for a good product, Smart Chicken also makes an air-chilled chicken, and I've heard of teams using Tyson and having good luck with those two as well. But by all means, use whatever you can find local. Just continuously use the same product so that way you can get the same results every cook. So as you can see, chicken comes in a 4-pack, and I just like to open it there in that corner, rip that open. Now let's take a look at all of these chickens because I won't use all of them in the competition here. So we'll pull out that one, and this one. If you had to make a guess, which chicken thigh do you think I would not use right off the bat? If you guessed this one, you are correct. And the reason I wouldn't use that one is because this one seems like a little bit smaller. It has a gash in the top of that, but I'm not really so concerned about that. And other than that, I mean, it looks like a pretty good chicken. It's just a little undersized for my liking. Here's the next piece of chicken. This one is usable. I'd like to see that bone hasn't been nicked off the back there, but that's okay. I can work with that one. This one has a nice size to it too as well, which is nice. So I think that'll make a nice piece of competition chicken. So we'll certainly be using that one. And this one looks pretty good too as well. Again, I'm not too concerned about these little gashes in the skin here. The sauce is going to cover that up when they get into it. And this one has that nice bone that I'm looking for, and the cap on the top is still intact. And you can see that the skin here doesn't have too much yellowing on it. It's pretty white. There are some feathers and things that are on here, right? You could spend your time picking those things off if you like. So let me show you how to trim this thing up. And it's really not that difficult. It can be time consuming, right? When I first got into cooking competition chicken, I over trimmed the heck out of these things. And one thing that you want to remember about chicken is that the more that you trim it and the more that you break it down, you're going to be breaking down those muscle pieces, and those are going to be leading to drier bites. And when a judge bites into this, we want it to make sure that it's one bite and that it's nice and juicy and it's got a great flavor to it, right? And all of that starts with your trim work at home. The trim work at home is also going to be important because that's going to allow us to try and achieve some uniformity, which is going to help our appearance scores from a KCBS perspective too as well. So the first thing that I do is I come in and I'm just going to square off the top of our chicken here, right? And I just cut right down straight just like that. And then I flip that chicken over, right? And I just like to nick off this top bone, and I'm not taking it all the way off, or I'm not cutting that bone off. I'm just shearing it off. That's going to help that chicken to lay flat, right? And then on the back side here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to shear off that back piece of that bone there, and a little bit more. So that looks good there. So now I've got kind of a flattish surface for that chicken to sit down and do. Is I'm going to flip this back over. I'm going to peel the back of that chicken up a little bit there. And then I'm just going to shave off the end of this bone here, right? And this is just going to help that chicken to wrap around that bone a little bit better as we look to make those nice little chicken pillows that you see in people's KCBS boxes all the time. Now for the skin decision. You have two options that you can do here. You can take this completely off and you can trim it and shape it all the way down. I've had good results with that in the past. What I like to do is just flip that over there. I am going to trim this, and you have to be careful here. I'm using a sharp 6.5-inch Victorinox knife here, but I'm just going to square off my chicken here. So I'm just going to pull that out of there, just like so. Being very careful not to cut through my skin. Just slow. If you take it nice and slow, you can see that pulls away very nicely there. And I'm just slowly pulling that out. And then I'm going to turn it this way here. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to square off the back end of this chicken just from right here too as well. And being careful not to cut through my skin there. I got a little bit into the fat, but not too concerned about that. And then you can just use your knife and just kind of clean up that a little bit. And you can clean up some of this extra fat kind of like I'm doing here. That's just going to help that to seal up a little better. But I'm not scraping the entire skin like I used to be doing. And then the last thing I want to do here is just trim up this kind of unsightly edge here, right? And so I am just going to make one little swoop there and get that piece of chicken out of there too as well. This is looking pretty good here so far, right? So there is this flap of chicken skin this flap of chicken that's here, right? And you can pull that up if you'd like. And then I just like to pull out that tendon that's underneath of there, carefully not to destroy the integrity of the chicken. And I used to dig into this thing and get all of those tendons out of there and try to trim out fat and stuff. But I stopped doing all of that just because, like I mentioned previously, I'd like to keep the chicken intact as much as possible. So there is our, there's kind of our shaped chicken skin here, right? And we can flip this back over here. And now you can see, you can kind of just roll this up like so and tuck it in like this. And there you have it, a nice little trimmed chicken thigh. All right, so all we got to do is repeat this 7 more times and we'll be ready to head down to Fire on Ice here in Minnesota this weekend. If you're watching this video and you're thinking, David, I've been to your classes, that's not at all how you taught me to trim chicken, then you'd be correct. I made an adjustment last year about in the middle of the season because my chicken scores were not where I wanted them to be. And being a prudent contender, you need to make adjustments and understand what adjustments you're making and why you're making those adjustments. I'm going to take a second to show you how I used to trim my chicken before I came here. Okay, so we use that smaller piece of chicken that I called out of there earlier to show you how I used to trim chicken. You know, on my barbecue journey in beginning, I scoured a lot of YouTube videos trying to figure out how to cook competition chicken. Probably a lot similar to you all here today watching this video. And what I found is that most judges prefer to have bite through skin, and the way that guys were accomplishing that was by scraping all of this fat that's in the interior of the skin that's out of here, all of this yellow fat, right? And basically, you just get a knife and you just get after it, and you're just peeling that all off of there. And the reason I think that a lot of people did this is because back in the older days, some of the OGs, so to speak, they were cooking barbecue at a lower temperature, kind of a low and slow approach to barbecue. At least that's my assumption, right? And the reason that they were scraping these skins, I believe, is because cooking at those lower temperatures, they weren't able to get to get this fat to render so that they could get that bite through skin. And let me be clear, nowhere in the KCBS rules does it say that your chicken needs to have bite through skin. It just became at some point it just became the preferred bite that judges were looking for, right? So then everybody was trying to achieve that. I stopped cooking it this way last year and trimming it this way last year because I came to the realization that I am putting a lot of heat on my chicken, right? I cook everything on a drum smoker, and the temperatures are usually north of 300 degrees, right? We'll get more into that into the process of how I cook my chicken in the next video. So you make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're interested in seeing that, so you don't mix it. But at this temperature, I was finding that my chicken bite was, although the skin was bite through, it just wasn't as juicy as it could be. And I believe that it was because I was trimming off pretty much all of this fat. And as you can see, this is a pretty time consuming process. I think if you are cooking at a lower temperature, this is probably a necessary step that you need to take to get that skin render that you're looking for. But if you're cooking at a higher temperature on a drum, I think that's why I can get away with the trim that I'm doing now, right? So that's about as far as I would take it, right? As far as that's concerned, I usually would leave just that little bit of the fat over there, right? Because one thing that will happen is if cooking at higher temperatures, I would notice that these skins would pop, and then I'd end up with huge holes in the middle because there wasn't enough fat there, and the temperature was too high to accommodate that chicken there, right? But I basically would do the same thing. I'd come through and I'd chop off this bone, not chop, but shave off that bone there, right? And then flip it over. And again, I'd take off that little knuckle there. And one thing that I'm not doing that I've seen some guys do is that they will take off this knuckle completely. And the reason I don't do that is because presentation wise, right? Like sometimes you can end up with chicken shards in there. A judge could get that and end up biting into it. Sometimes that marrow runs back out into your chicken, right? And you get like kind of an unsightly reddish color that you don't like in there. But again, you do what best works best for you in a process that's easiest for you, right? So then I just take that off there, flip that over, trim that down on the back there, right? So this process is pretty much the same as what I was doing before. And then take up this flap here, right? And pull out that skin there, or pull out that vein that's underneath of there, right? You can see in this chicken, it kind of runs all the way across there, right? So we're gonna get just all of that out of there, um, and then all of this is doing is just removing those tendons and those veins, just because we don't want a judge to bite into those, and get something that's undesirable, right? Like everything that we're doing, is just to please those judges and to give them the most enjoyable bite of chicken that we can possibly. And then finally, I would come off and I'd square off this bottom here. And I turn that around this way here, right? And then basically, you know, I've got about that much on this side, and I need to clean this edge off a little bit here, so I can't take too much there. And then I'd want a nice even piece of chicken, so I was gonna probably square that off just about there, right? And this is why I left this piece of chicken out, because I knew that that was gonna be pretty tiny if I was gonna get that even on both sides, right? And then just clean up that edge again. You can see that this is quite intensive, right? It's taking a few minutes to get this to a point where it's suitable for the shape that I would want, right? And that's pretty tiny, which is why I was avoiding it. But it makes a great demo piece of chicken. And then basically, what we're doing is we're just putting that chicken back in there, and then we're just rolling her back in her skin, right? And that's what that looks like. So there you have it. This is the world's tiniest piece of competition chicken. And what I was trying to illustrate here is just, there's a lot of ways to get to that end process, and the way that you get to that end box and that final product should be really a derivative of how you're cooking and how you're cooking things, right? And what you're going to learn through this series of videos is my process, and there are 1,000 different ways to get to the same endpoint, but this is going to be a great tutorial for those of you who are just getting into competition barbecue, are looking for a new edge, or for judges that are curious what some of our competition teams get through. But I've got 7 more chicken thighs to get through, 7 to 8 more chicken thighs to get through so that we can get ready for this weekend. I'm going to get that trimmed up, and I'll bring you guys back in, show you how I package it up so we can get ready to head out to comp.
Chicken trimming can be a marathon process, and it's taken me a little while because I'm a little rusty, admittedly, to get through these 13 pieces of chicken. I went through 4 packs out of the 5 that I bought. Out of those packages, I was able to identify 6 pieces of chicken that I consider my ideal size chicken. That's the ones that are here. Here in the middle, I've got chickens that I consider to be a little bit undersized or a little bit smaller than I would like. And then on your far left are the chickens that I think are a little bit too big for competition chicken. And let me rephrase. It's not that they're too big. They're just a lot bigger than our other size pieces of chicken here. So ideally what's going to happen is that these are going to take a little bit longer to cook. So they probably won't have the same bite as these pieces of chicken over here. But nonetheless, they're all going to come with me this weekend to our first contest of 2025. So I'm going to package these up, vacuum seal them in a bag, and then we're going to get packed up and head out to the contest. If you're loving this content, hit that subscribe button. And up next, I'm going to put the video right here so you can see how we process the chicken to get it ready for our cook on Saturday.